The phrase dirty bomb has been used a lot in this country in the last 8 years. After 9/11, it became a national nightmare that the next attack might have a radioactive component. From public anxiety in the Cold War about Russia hitting us with a nuclear missile or dropping a nuclear bomb on us, we moved on to new public anxiety about some extremist, nihilist terrorist group exploding the very distant cousin of a nuclear weapon in this country, using a conventional explosive, something like dynamite, to disperse radioactive material. It's a dirty bomb. When you think dirty bomb, don't think mushroom cloud. Think panic. Think terror. It's an attack designed to kill, sure, but also to get into our national psyche and to terrify us. One of the most high-profile terrorism arrests of the post-9/11 era was Jose Padilla, a U.S. citizen picked up at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. He was charged loudly and repeatedly by Bush administration officials with having plotted to set off a dirty bomb in an American city. Now, Mr. Padilla was never charged with any such thing. He went to jail ultimately on totally unrelated charges. But that did not stop Bush administration officials from touting the supposedly thwarted dirty bomb attack again and again and again and again because of its power, even in the abstract, to terrify us. And that brings us to the new American dirty bomb news that worryingly is not totally abstract. On December 9th, in the small town of Belfast, Maine, which is between Bangor and Portland, police responded to an emergency call. 31-year-old Amber Cummings had reportedly shot and killed her husband, James, after what she says were years of mental, physical, and sexual abuse. Allegations seemingly corroborated by tradesmen who had done work in the home and who had described James Cummings as abusive and his wife as cowering in his presence. Upon entering the home, police reportedly found material linking Mr. Cummings to white supremacist groups, including an application he had filled out to join the National Socialist movement. And yes, that's National Socialist as in Nazi. Mr. Cummings had told neighbors he was a Nazi. He had bragged about his admiration for Adolf Hitler. He had bragged about owning Nazi memorabilia, including Hitler's cutlery and place settings. What kind of a self-respecting Nazi collects place settings? Dessert spoons. Anyway, Amber Cummings reportedly also told police that her husband was, quote, very upset when Barack Obama was elected president. Now, the reason this isn't just a dead jerk story, a domestic violence story, a local extremist gone bad story, is because of what else was found in James Cummings' house. According to a leaked document from the Washington Regional Threat and Analysis Center, state authorities detected radiation emissions in 4 small jars in the house. They were labeled uranium metal, as well as one jar labeled thorium. In addition, authorities found 4 one-gallon containers of 35% hydrogen peroxide. So you know, that's the formulation of that chemical that you need for peroxide-based explosives. Also, they found lithium metal, thermite, aluminum powder, beryllium, boron, black iron oxide, and magnesium ribbon. The FBI also noted the presence of literature about how to construct a dirty bomb. Did Mr. Cummings construct a dirty bomb? No, he did not. Does he still pose any sort of threat to anyone, including his wife? No, he was very, very dead. Mrs. Cummings has pled temporary insanity against the murder charges that are pending against her in Maine. But should this guy have been found out, I don't know, before he died? And post 9/11, have we focused too much on stopping bin Laden again at the expense of potentially stopping the next Timothy McVeigh? Joining us now, Walter Griffin.
Thank you, Rachel.
Joining us now to try to put this in some context is the guy who I turn to when I need level-headed perspective on all things bomb-related and radiation-related. Joe Cirincione is president of the Plowshares Fund. He's the author of Bomb Scare, The History and Future of Nuclear Weapons. Joe, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, Rachel.
Just to get it out of the way right off the top here, please explain the difference between a nuclear weapon and a dirty bomb.
Sure. A nuclear weapon is an explosive device that emits a large amount of blast, radiation, and heat. It's your mushroom cloud. A dirty bomb is not a nuclear explosion. It is basically a terrorist device, for example, a truck bomb, a car bomb, laced with radioactive particles that will disperse over 10 square blocks and irradiate those that amount of territory. It doesn't actually kill anyone immediately. What it does is poison the territory, contaminate the territory, make it hazardous for anybody to go back to the buildings or space.
Joe, from the publicly available information about this case, can you tell whether or not James Cummings had amassed enough material to make any sort of credible dirty bomb?
This was sort of a starter kit for a dirty bomb. He was trying to put together the explosive part of it. The radioactive material wouldn't have caused much radiation damage. This was fairly low-level stuff. Uranium, beryllium, thorium. Yes, these are dangerous materials. Beryllium, if inhaled, for example, will give you lung disease, but nothing like what he really needed. What's disturbing is that he had material on cesium-137, on cobalt-60. These are the highly radioactive sources, the classic dirty bomb. A few grams of this in an explosive device could contaminate 20, 30 square blocks.
And he had information about those materials, but he didn't have those materials themselves.
That's exactly right. So the question is, if he had more time, could he have gotten that? Could he have posed a serious risk?
Joe, the Maine Public Safety Commissioner says that technically all the stuff that was found in this guy's house could be purchased legally. Is that generally the thing we need to understand about the dirty bomb threat, that anybody who really wanted to accumulate the materials for it could, given them money, time, and patience?
That's exactly right. So what you're really worried about here is not only was this guy a white supremacist, but he was a trust fund dirty bomber, as Jeffrey Lewis says on his blog. He had money, so therefore you could imagine him setting up various scenarios where he could legally purchase, say, medical devices with cesium-137. One medical gauge full of cesium-137 could have been all he needed for a dirty bomb. So yes, there was real cause for worry in this, the first ever actual dirty bomb case in America.
Most important question here then, Joe. Given the availability of the necessary ingredients, even the scariest ones, what's the counterproliferation strategy here? Can there be one?
Well, what you're worried about is that someone with a device like this would contaminate 10 square blocks of, say, Washington and paralyze the city or financial district of New York or London, for that matter, and cause a real panic. So the only way to stop this is to prevent people from getting that radioactive material in the first place. What you want to do is, number one, reduce. A lot of the material we're talking about does not have to be used. Americinum, for example, is in our smoke detectors. Why do we use radioactive material in our smoke detectors? Stop it. Use other means. Cesium itself could be used. There are other non-radiological materials that could be used. The second is to secure this material. Increase the verification procedures for people getting the material, do cradle-to-grave surveillance of this material, and make sure that we have secured all the available materials in their original sources. You're not so much worried about people buying a bunch of smoke detectors. You're worried about people going to the source, the smoke detector factory, and stealing or acquiring that material. So reduce, secure. Those are your two main counters to this threat.
Joe Cirincione, president of the Plowshares, the Global Security Fund. You always make me feel both simultaneously worse and better about these things. I feel like I understand it better, but now I know how scary it is. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Rachel.
Coming up, you and I